And for those of you joining us on YouTube, we're just getting to your random questions and topic suggestions. If there's something you'd like to hear me talk about, all you need to do is send me an email to vorwinfo@gmail.com, and then I'll be able to talk about it. And it could be any topic, anything under the sun. I'm open to discussing. There's nothing. I mean, it comes down, of course, to what I'm comfortable with, but just share it. There's no harm in that. All right, we have a few more questions coming in. Sabrina N. in New York. What are your thoughts on things such as astral projection, telepathy? Do you think that the mind is capable of such things? Part of me does believe that certain things like telepathy and that it really is possible. I really do believe that. I think when it comes down to the mind, there are lots of things that, even about our own processes, that we just fully do not understand, do not grasp. Isn't necessarily how we think, how we perceive it to be right now, the way maybe telepathy works. Maybe not. But I think that there are certain abilities, at least with our minds, that we just do not fully understand at this point in time, I think that being one of them. Now, one common myth when it comes down to our minds that should be clarified, just because some people still, it's something that still gets confused at this point in time. Sometimes people will say that we only use, I think, like 10% of our brains, but that is just not true. We use 100% of our brains, and we always have, always will. Though it sometimes doesn't seem like it, we do, and that's where that stands. So the whole thing about the 10% of our brains is just, it's a myth, best way to put it. Adam is checking in. He says, "Hey John, I would like for you to talk about the Titanic, the movie or the ship. What are your thoughts on it?" Thanks from Adam. All right, Adam. Well, of course, the Titanic, the ship, was a terrible tragedy. It happened long ago, but it was a great loss of life. And, it's sad to think about that it was completely the result of human error. And, that's where it stands. As for the movie, talk about a widely successful film. I mean, they really were able to milk that thing and just make so much from that. And they were able to just get the maximum, if you ask me anyway, the maximum effectiveness out of that film, Titanic. I mean, even sometimes when I'm watching television, I still see that film played in like the middle of the night on some channels, and it's been, 20 years now or more? So it's still going. Extremely successful film. Tyler in Mississippi checking in. Would you be able to share your thoughts on reptilians? The belief that Earth is secretly governed by a race of interdimensional reptilian humanoids that have supposedly replaced our world leaders and major celebrities through shape-shifting and or interbreeding and feed on human blood to survive. That's an odd one. I've heard about the theory of the reptilians. I don't believe that one at all. I'm sorry, I don't. Where's the proof? Where's the proof? Surely, maybe they found a few scales here and there. Maybe there's some proof of, maybe they could be very cunning, but one of them would have to mess up at some point. So where's the proof that they really exist? And I suppose their motive would be feeding on the liquids, to survive and to keep going. I get that. But if that's the case, if their goal is to just use that to survive, then why do they become world leaders and major celebrities? Why not just be some average Joe that won't arouse any suspicion? There's so many flaws with that. But you would better believe I'd be completely dumbfounded if somehow it ended up being that was actually the case. Now, one thing I myself have been called a reptilian a good number of times. I get called pretty much everything in the book. So I have been accused of being a reptilian, but I can assure you that I am not. So there are no scales under the suit. That's not why I wear one every single day, so no need to fear, no need to worry, all is well. Patrick in the UK, what are your views of people who believe the Earth is flat? What compels them to believe something like that, and also a view of cults? Well, I think that's two different topics, really. Of course, cults and flat earthers can really be lumped into the same thing, but they're all different types of cults out there. So I would like to save that discussion for another day. As for flat earthers themselves, I mean, I think you have really, I mean, maybe three types of flat earthers out there, right? You have the religious flat earthers who try and take like a real literal interpretation of the Bible, and they try to interpret certain verses and phrases that would thereby claim the earth is flat. You have kids, like, teenagers, who are literally spewing this stuff out as a joke just to mess with people, troll people. They themselves may not necessarily be sincere in their beliefs. I'm sure there are a few that actually believe it. And then the third type is kind of the individuals who just really believe that the Earth is flat and that this information is being suppressed by the world government, and that this that the Earth, this, they would say, illusion that the Earth is spherical is not true, and that it's just being put on us as disinformation. The drill. And I mean, of course, that ideology has always been around. You can thank social media, I think, for the real proliferation of it. The fact that, of course, in this day and age, more people kind of know how to Photoshop, how to make images, infographics, you name it. They can go ahead and make a real catchy chart, something that's visually stimulating that pops, and edit a picture, or, pick and choose. Of course, some of you are familiar with the phrase cherry picking. You take a wide variety of images and you just find the select few that conform to the viewpoint that you're trying to promote. For instance, flat Earth. One image that they always like to use is from GoPros, high in the atmosphere. And they like to find these images. Of course, of all the high altitude images that exist, they find the select few whereupon the lens makes it seem as though the horizon is flat and not curved. So they'll cherry pick, they'll find these images, put them on a chart, and they'll say, well, see, the Earth is flat. Look, this image proves it, right? They're not going to talk about the thousands upon thousands of images they had to scroll through to find the one they wanted. They're just going to find this one, and they're going to act like that represents everything, which just isn't true. So I think because of the ability to make these infographics and easy to read, easy to understand means of information transference, true or otherwise, that's what really brought it to that people now all of a sudden, it makes it easier for people to buy up, eat it up, digest it, and I think that's what does it. Going over to Steve, he just has a short question about the shortwave. Are any of your shortwave shows archived? Not anymore. I do have all of the programs in my possession, so I have the, I guess you would call it the master file, because of course I promote the shows, produce the shows, apologies, and then of course I send them to the stations that air them. But I have all the original copies still saved on my computer. Unfortunately, because of the music and copyright restrictions placed upon them, I cannot have them online, so unfortunately they are archived for me, but I cannot share them. So that's where that stands. So publicly, no, none of them are. But I do, like I said, have all of the recordings still in my possession. So maybe one day, if I can find a good site that could host it without trouble, we'll see what happens. Jason in North Dakota. Nice to hear from listeners in North Dakota. We don't hear from them very often. I wanted to get your opinion on how we can improve mental health treatment. I have issues with mental health and have seen firsthand that it is not taken very seriously. I feel like a very important step to improve treatment would be to take a much more personal approach. We focus so much on just treating these symptoms with medication instead of taking the time and energy to counsel people through their mental illness. I feel like we have the ability to do a better job, but not the will. Thank you, Jason. Taking a sip of water here. Here's where it comes down to with mental health. I agree with what you have to say to the extent that it is, I think, in many cases, a two-part treatment. It all depends on what it is, too. Different conditions are going to have different treatments, right? There's number one, even with depression. There's all different types of depression. You have seasonal affectiveness disorder. You have clinical depression, very severe. You have, there's all different types, all different severities, different types of anxiety, and then the more especially severe illnesses, like schizophrenia, right, bipolar disorder, and there's just so many out there. All of these require their own treatment plans and their own means to be able to tackle them. So, looks like I knocked something on the floor there. So, I absolutely agree. I think that there needs to be this focus on, number one, being able to find the right prescription drugs to treat these illnesses. Because another thing, of course, you have some of the different types of antidepressants, antipsychotics. Some of them work better with some people than others. You hear the stories about people changing up their meds because certain ones just don't work. Some side effects are bad. So you need to find that determination in a doctor that'll listen to you and will really understand whether this medication is working for you or not. And then you're right, they have to follow through and take that counseling as well. Now, of course, it won't be a psychiatrist that's doing that. You're going to have to find a therapist or a counselor to talk to, but it's a two-part thing. Because while the medications can relieve some of the symptoms and make things better a bit, sometimes you're still going to have it inside of you. It's not fully overcoming it. It's making it better, but you're not all the way there. I think you need to be able to talk it out, share it with someone who is professionally trained to be able to help you out. Someone who's there for you, who kind of understands what you're going through and can help you along the way. So absolutely, I think that there needs to be more energy put forth to it. One other thing that I think needs to be done as well is cost. I think that unfortunately it's so expensive. Lots of people who deal with severe mental illness, sometimes they can't afford to go to their jobs anymore. They get fired, they get laid off, they can't work. It's just taking such a harsh toll on their lives. Don't have the best insurance. They can't even afford to see a doctor to begin with, let alone a therapist, a counselor, or be able to afford any of the prescription drugs that they would need to treat what they're going through. It's a complicated issue, and I could only say I hope one day it gets better soon. Yeah. One day soon it gets better is what I'm trying to say. This is VORW International.